Well, my friends, sit back. Make yourself some tea or pour something stronger if your soul demands it. Because the story I'm about to tell you is not just some tale. It's a true kaleidoscope of human foolishness, passions, and consequences that, as always, catch up with us at the worst possible moment. And if you think this is going to be a story about love, passion, and romance, then you, my friends, are deeply mistaken. This is a story about how one small mistake can turn into a huge, loud, public scandal that spreads through the company faster than a rumor about free donuts in the break room. Let me start by saying that I was never what you'd call a career woman. No, I wasn't lazy. I just always believed that work was nothing more than a way to pay the bills and that real life began after 5 p.m. But, as fate would have it, I was in for a surprise in the form of a new boss. Mr. James, or just James as he liked to introduce himself. He was one of those people who made an impression immediately. Tall, confident, with a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. And of course, he was married. But as you probably understand, that never stops men like him. Our first encounter happened at a corporate party. Oh, those office parties. They always start with innocent toasts to the company's success and end with someone dancing on a table. Someone crying in the corner, and someone, well, you get the idea. James approached me with a glass of wine and cracked some joke that I don't even remember, but it made me laugh. Then there were a few more glasses, a few dances, and, well, you know how these things go. One moment, you're just talking, and the next, you wake up in a stranger's bed. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been run over by a truck. My head was pounding, my thoughts were a mess, and all I wanted was to disappear. But as it turned out, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was waiting for me at work. The first sign that something was wrong was the way my colleagues were looking at me. Some with curiosity, others with barely concealed smirks. I was trying to figure out what was going on until I heard someone whisper, "Did you see the video?" Video? What video? My heart dropped to my stomach and then plummeted straight into the abyss when I opened my work email and saw a message with the subject line, "For general viewing." There was a video of me and James, and it had been recorded. Now, my friends, imagine this. You walk into work and everyone already knows how you spent the previous night. And not just knows, they can rewatch it in HD quality. It's like standing naked on stage in front of a packed audience, only worse because this isn't a stage. It's your office. And the audience? Your coworkers, who now look at you as if you're the main character in some cheap adult film. James, of course, vanished. No, he didn't quit. He just started avoiding me like the plague. And me? I became a star. Every time I walked past the water cooler, conversations would abruptly stop, only to resume twice as loud the moment I turned away. Every glance, every whisper, every chuckle. It was all a constant reminder that I had made a mistake that could never be undone. Of course, this whole thing couldn't end well. James was called in by management, and like a true gentleman, he threw me under the bus. According to him, I seduced him. I orchestrated the whole thing. And the video? Well, apparently it filmed itself. I was called in for a meeting and like an idiot, I tried to defend myself. But what could I possibly say when I had no evidence except my own word? In the end, I was fired. Not immediately, of course. First came a formal reprimand, then another, and then, "We believe it's best if you explore new opportunities elsewhere." And you know what the worst part was? Not that I lost my job, but that I became a joke. Every time I ran into a former colleague, I could see in their eyes that moment, the one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. After being fired, I found myself in a situation best described as stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I needed to find a new job. On the other, I was terrified that this damn scandal would follow me like a shadow. Because in today's world, where the internet remembers everything and office gossip spreads faster than the flu in peak season, it was naive to hope that this story would stay within my old company. The first few weeks, I lived in a near-paranoid state. Every time I sent out a resume, I felt like the HR manager had already seen the video. Every interview invitation made me flinch. What if they already knew? What if it was a trap? But as it turned out, the world isn't as cruel as I feared. Or maybe I just got lucky. I found a new job at a small company. No office parties, no cameras, and most importantly, no James. My colleagues were nice, down-to-earth people who were more interested in their own business than in gossip. And even though I still felt a little tainted, I was slowly starting to recover. But as they say, the truth always comes out. One day at lunch, one of my colleagues with whom I had started to become friends cautiously asked, "Is it true that you know, with that boss?" I froze. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. But instead of getting embarrassed or trying to defend myself, I suddenly laughed. Yes, I laughed. My nerves must have been stretched to the limit. "It's true," I said. "And you know what? It was the stupidest mistake of my life. But now I know I'll never let something like that happen again." To my surprise, my colleague didn't judge me. Instead, she shrugged and said, "Well, things happen. The important thing is that you got through it. And honestly, it kinda makes you more interesting." We both laughed. And at that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, things weren't as bad as I had thought. Now that enough time has passed, I can say that this scandal taught me a few important things. First, never lose your head, no matter how much it feels like just this one time. Second, cameras are everywhere, and you never know who might be recording or why. And third, the most important thing isn't what other people think of you. It's how you see yourself. I never denied my mistake. Yes, I made it. Yes, it was stupid. But I also realized that it didn't make me a bad person. It just made me human. Someone who can screw up, learn from their mistakes, and move forward. And what about James? Well, my friends, his story didn't end as well as mine. After the scandal, his career took a nosedive. His colleagues stopped trusting him. His bosses started looking for an excuse to fire him, and his wife, after finding out about his adventures, filed for divorce. I heard he tried to find a new job, but apparently his reputation was already ruined. Sometimes I think that maybe he got what he deserved. But more often, I just feel grateful that this experience made me stronger. And if someone reading this story right now feels like their life is over because of one mistake, remember, this is not the end. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. Since starting my new job, my life has finally begun to settle down. My coworkers were normal people who didn't care much for office gossip, and my boss was a woman who valued professionalism over drama. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove, to myself more than anyone else, that I was still worth something despite my past mistakes. But, as it often happens, the past doesn't let go so easily. One evening, as I was about to leave the office, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. And the voice on the other end made my blood run cold. "Hey, it's James." James. That James. The one who had once been my boss and then vanished from my life like a ghost. He said he wanted to meet. "Just to talk," he added, as if that would make me feel any better. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. We agreed to meet at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where no one was likely to recognize us. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. He looked older, exhausted, and his eyes held a strange mix of hope and desperation. We sat down, and he started talking. Turns out, after the scandal, his life became a nightmare. He lost his job, his family, his friends, and now he wanted to apologize. "I know I can't change what happened," he said, "but I want to ask for your forgiveness. And I want to offer you something." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a USB drive, and placed it on the table. "This is all that's left of that video. I destroyed every other copy. And I want you to know that no one will ever see it again." I stared at the USB drive like it was some kind of strange artifact. This was the video that had ruined my life. And now it was lying in front of me, a symbol that the past could finally be left behind. "Thank you," I said. But why are you doing this? He sighed. Because I finally realized I was wrong. And because I want to start over. And I want you to know that you're not alone. It turned out that James wasn't just apologizing. He had a plan. He wanted to start a project to help people who had gone through similar situations. We can do something good, he said. We can help others avoid the mistakes we made. I hesitated. On the one hand, it seemed like a noble idea. On the other, I wasn't sure I wanted to work with James again. But in the end, I agreed. Not because I had forgiven him, but because I realized this could be an opportunity. Not just for him, but for me too. Now, we're working on this project. It's not easy, and sometimes it feels like the past is still pulling us back. But I truly believe we can make a difference. And if our story helps even one person avoid the mistakes we made, then it will all be worth it. So, my friends, this isn't just a story about falling. It's about getting back up. And if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, just remember, life goes on. And sometimes the best thing we can do is help others, even when we're still trying to fix our own problems. And now, if you'll excuse me, James and I have a project meeting. And you know what? This time, I have a feeling that things will be different. Because as a wise person once said, life isn't what happens to you. It's how you react to it. And I've decided to react with a smile.